Well, good morning to everybody. Good to see you guys here. Good morning. Good morning. Linda, it is so good to have you with us. I'm so glad to see you. You're just this great blessing that came down to us from Canada. Sent to us from Canada, yes. So maybe you could start by telling us a little bit about your life. Many people don't know you very well, and I know you as both an artist and a priest. So if you could tell a little bit about how that happened. How did you get called to be both? Oh, you got to turn your mic on. There you go.
Oh, that would make sense. That would help. It's curious. The same way I ended up here. A surprise, a delightful surprise. In a parish, in a large parish about the same size as this one, in Worcester, Massachusetts, I was teaching a class called Doctrine as Drama, and working with the two theater communities, equity theater communities in the city. In my class, I had a major artist. Her name was Sally Bishop, and her work, as far as I know, is still carried in the Arden Gallery in Boston on Newbury Street. She was a live wire, very feisty, and if I would say something in the class about identity and transformation, her response would be, "What do you mean by that, Linda Privitera?" And she would take me into her studio and ask me what I saw. So both of us had a different kind of symbolic language, and we became friends as we learned to hear each other better. One day she said to me, "There's more creativity in you than just in your programming."
Now, Linda, so were you a professor at this point? Were you teaching?
No, I was the associate rector and then priest in charge.
So you'd already become a priest?
Yeah.
So you became a priest first?
Yes.
Ah, got it.
And then she said, "You need to do art." And I had not done art. I had played music when I was a young person in high school. I sang in college and so on, but somehow art and music, I had to make a choice between one or the other when I was in high school. And I always regretted that I hadn't chosen art. And in college, my undergraduate work was done in nursing and in science, BSN. And I had 2 electives in 5 years, and they were art and religion. And that's where my heart rested.
Tells you what you were interested in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the week that my friend Sally died, I was enrolled in my first art class at the Worcester Art Museum. And my teacher was Tom Lewis. Tom was a member of the Plowshares group, along with the Berrigan boys, we call them, Philip and Daniel Berrigan, whose civil disobedience against nuclear war and how we spent our money would land them in jail on a regular basis, both in local and federal prisons. And Tom was often in prison, where a judge, I still remember a judge in Maine called all of them the conscience of a nation. Tom's art, this is my first teacher, he was a printmaker. His faith was throughout his art, and I got to see up close and personal how someone's spirituality could live through them in a variety of ways, from the figures he chose to the colors he used. I saw Tom in his work. And so it was a wonderful model for me. I still remember one series of drawings he did when he was in prison in New York City, or in jail in New York City. They were called the mayonnaise drawings. And he used the mayonnaise from the sandwich he'd been given and mixed it with the dirt on the floor of the jail and drew portraits of the people with whom he was in jail.
Wow.
And his creativity, his imagination, and mostly his faith made an enormous difference to me.
So in his case, you could say that art was a vehicle for the Holy Spirit to express the divine love through him.
Yes.
Do you find that's the same for you? Is that it's a way of communicating God's love or through you?
Yes, and I don't always know what I'm saying until I see it. There are some people who are really very deliberate. I'm going to paint this landscape. I'm going to paint this portrait. My art is more intuitive, I would say, and it's multi-layered. I'm no longer a printmaker. I work with mixed media. I'm a collage artist for the most part. And I don't always know what's going to come out of me. And there are times when I will go to my therapist or my spiritual director, depending upon who I'm seeing at the time, and say, well, this came out of me this week. What do you think? And the answer is, of course, why don't you tell me about this piece? So I often discover what's troubling me or what's giving me delight in my art, sometimes retrospectively. My work is often layered, the way I think the life of faith is layered, and I try to pay attention. So in November, I'm going to show you one of the techniques by which I learned how to do this, and it's called soul collage. So in the quiet garden mornings, we're going to play a little bit with the soul's landscape through art. And
wow, that sounds wonderful. So Linda, let me fill in some gaps for people. So how long have you been a priest, and where were you ordained?
35 years.
35 years, wow. You beat me.
I wasn't,
I'm
well,
26
I'm much
years.
older than you are. You know,
And where were you ordained then?
I was ordained in the Diocese of Connecticut. I went to Yale for my master's in divinity.
Just me.
And yeah.
Yeah.
And then I got my doctorate in Boston.
And what was your doctorate in?
Art as spiritual practice. So I got, I'm a late bloomer. That includes with the art. I didn't get my master's until I was 40. I got my doctorate at 60. And no, you can't know how old I am now. But the doctoral degree was in congregational development, and what happened was that my third and major teacher have been my parishes. So the doctorate is in art as spiritual practice within a community of faith. And so the parish in Boston and then in Ottawa taught me so much about what is inside people that doesn't necessarily come out unless it's invited.
You know, it's interesting, when children are little, we put paper and glue and pens in front of them all the time and let them express themselves, but then something happens and we stop doing it. we grow up, and it makes me think, Jesus said, unless you become like a little child, we should be getting out our stuff again and doing what you're doing. Just make something and let it
We
speak.
don't play.
We don't play.
We don't give ourselves permission to play. And there's some art critic that lives somewhere in our heads or on our shoulders, and maybe she was our third grade teacher, or, I have no idea. But there's somebody in there who says, wow, do you see the one over there that has 3 pussy willows on each stem? As if your creation was not quite up to par. And so I think that the art critic, along with a lot of other critics, can live in us and not give us the freedom, I think you're right, that the Spirit wants to express through creativity, through imagination, what God might want to be saying to us. So it can come through a different form.
Yeah, so it's opening up a channel of communication. And I love how you say that your parish has taught you art is an exchange, and so they tell you things, don't they?
The first parish, the one in Boston, I invited them to do Stations of the Cross. There weren't any. I had never seen that, and that diocese and that parish was kind of middle of the road, Episcopal kind of Protestant, and they weren't used to doing art. And so they had all of Lent to produce one Station of the Cross. Everybody got the same size piece of wood, and then they wrote about and explained what was in their piece. And they showed me so much about their spiritual life that I wouldn't have had access to otherwise. And so the Good Friday Stations of the Cross was done by the parishioners. And then we did Stations of Creation and Stations of Vocation and a variety of other things and installations, and all sorts of things happened because there were riches of faith in my congregations that hadn't had a way out. And so we put the stations, for example, in Boston in the parish, on the wall next to each other. So we could see each other's story. That was a wonderful addition to the stories that were being told from the pulpit or through the prayers or whatever. And nothing had to last forever. So it wasn't as if these were going to be permanent or sold on eBay or anywhere else. There wasn't a standard of art. There was a standard of the heart. And we opened up that invitation. And so I constantly learned from people. We did a body map project based on the body maps that were done by women in South Africa, women who had AIDS. And I had a parishioner, again, who had some issues with her body. She had a couple of tumors, and she took me to Brandeis University to see these body maps, and she said, I want to make a body map, and you're going to be my support person. And so we did the body map project. We also did a body Art for AIDS' sake, the art that was produced in the parish and sent in as donations from all over the place. We put into a calendar. We sold the calendar to parishioners. We sold the calendar at diocesan convention. And this small parish contributed $4,000 to the AIDS work that year alone. And then we did it again.
That's wonderful.
But they taught me, Pam taught me, that what was happening in her body could be a piece of beauty, could be her spiritual journey. And so the brown paper was like the brown paper we had when we were in grade school and we had to lie down and trace our body image. So she did that and then put the tumors and then there was a support person behind her.
Beautiful.
And I had to lay myself down on the floor for her. And it was the time when I understood what Jesus was talking about in terms of laying down your life for someone else. So all of those learnings were art-based and more.
You really have integrated art into your ministry so beautifully. Well, as you know, we've been talking about our home, which is this beautiful space, and we've talked about its architecture and its stained glass windows. But a lot of what we do on Sunday involves color, and people don't realize that, but the seasons of the church here have a visual component. I like to tell people when you come to church, the ancient liturgy is so beautiful because it invites you into God's presence using all of your senses. So we have our music, we have a smell, and we have sight, and then we have taste. But let's today talk about the visual. Tell us a little bit about why do you think, first of all, that that we do have liturgical colors. What is helpful about that for the average person coming into the church life?
I think that, like everything else, we're supposed to pay attention. We're supposed to pay attention. We're supposed to pay attention to things like 40 different shades of pink. I mean, if God thought 40 different shades of pink was a delight, we should pay attention. So when we come into this space, not only is time different, that gets signaled to us, not just chronological time and we start at the same time. This is Kairos time. This is another time. This is another realm. So color is one way we signal to each other that something else is going on here. We're to pay attention. So God's inviting us into a different set of seasons. Sometimes they coordinate, but usually there's no orange, you know. There's no orange in the church here. But there is red, and there is white, edged in gold. There is the green season, the longest season. And we've shifted Advent from what used to be a mini Lent. So it used to be, when I was growing up, it would be purple, or maybe a lighter purple, but not really. We've switched Advent to a theological tone, more of preparation and waiting. And so we use blue now, the color of the sky, the color that's usually associated with Mary. We often have services during that season for Blue Christmas, for people who are grieving during that season. And again, the tone is blue. It's a season of waiting for something to happen. And not all color impacts everybody the same.
But what you're saying, though, is that the color is associated with a mood or a feeling that is associated with what is going on in Jesus's life. So Advent is waiting for the birth. So you're saying that waiting sense is conveyed in blue. So again, we get back to that form of communication, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a different...
So tell us, Advent is blue, and then what happens at Christmas? What are we supposed to feel at Christmas?
Well, we have light. The birth of the light of the world, the birth of the light into Epiphany. So that season is white. And if you're lucky, you get tinged with gold.
Which is a color of heaven, evidently, yes?
Yeah.
Like our gospel book is gold to symbolize heaven.
Yeah. So, and then, yes, the light of the world, the light in the skies, the light going out, then it makes us think of, in Epiphany, the Magi, guided by starlight, guided by one particular star. It's the showing forth. And again, most every artist starts with white. So it's the beginning, it's the birthing, it's what you have to put on the canvas or the paper. You also have to learn how to preserve the white if you're a watercolorist, for example. You need that gesso and you need that titanium white.
So as many of you know, we usually depict the seasons of the church year in a circle because we go through the seasons of nature in a circle. So we start with Advent and Christmas. Then we have this season called Epiphany that is long or short depending on where Easter falls. And Epiphany, we go back to the green. Why do you think that is?
Well, because we're waiting to see things that are growing. We're waiting to see what the light is going to reveal. And we just had 2 people from the parish come back from Ireland, and I was remembering that in Ireland they talk about the 40 shades of green. There are 40 shades of green, and maybe more. Maybe more. And painters have their own particular shades of green, too. I have my favorites. So it is about
the rich
growth.
season of growth. Yeah. And then we get to Ash Wednesday and Lent. Tell us about, so Jesus is going into the desert and we are in purple.
We are in purple. I'm not sure what we associate the purple with now, but it used to be associated with royalty and passion and authority in some way. And I remember, was it Alice Walker's book, The Color Purple?
Mm-hmm.
But I remember one of the first times when I had to preach, when I was in seminary. And you know, the pulpits are always too high and you're always like sitting on a chair that's way too big for you and all the rest of that. I put on a purple dress so that I would have some power, so that I would feel less afraid. But purple is, it's a very rich color. It's a very strong color. And so, again, the church gives that color to you.
You would think it would be like brown or gray in Lent, though. It's not brown or gray, it's purple. And that's interesting to me.
Well, one year, I unloaded a truckload of sand on the altar for Lent.
Wow.
Because I wanted...
I wonder if that would go over well here. Not happening.
Well, it was a bit risky, I must admit. And I had another artist in the parish, this was in Ottawa, who drew pictures of the desert, painted pictures of the desert. So the front of the altar looked as if it was the Judean desert, and the two panels in the back were the Judean desert, and we would throw things into the desert, like a mask, taking off the masks during Lent. Anyway, purple was very expensive to make. It's just the way indigo is in the South, right? Those plants are costly. And so I think they're at some level, in the desert or not, we know there's a cost. Things are not going to be easy here.
Interesting. A high price to pay. And then as we move into Palm Sunday and Holy Week, we move to red, which is blood, right?
But the oxblood red is a different color. It's supposed to be a different color than the red of Pentecost.
Oh.
So the red of Pentecost is supposed to have more fire, more orange and yellow in it. The red of Holy Week is oxblood, and usually edged with like black velvet. There is a sense in which the ash of Ash Wednesday has come along with the color of the blood to Holy Week. And sometimes we use the regular red, but it's not the same. Just, we have a lot of options.
Yeah.
So.
And of course, Good Friday is black. It's empty. Death. And
Empty.
And then we return to our white and gold for Easter, same as Christmas.
Yeah.
Wonderful parallels there. Yeah.
Well, the most important places where light is for our story, the beginning and the fullness. Yeah.
And we use white at baptism and at funerals, which is always kind of counterintuitive but beautiful to me, that we put on the colors of heaven at a funeral. We don't wear black. Instead, the clergy wear white, and we vest the altar in white and gold.
And sometimes on our stoles we'll have written Alleluia in gold. The white stole, my white stole has Alleluia written in it.
And then we move from those great 50 days of Easter to the Pentecost, where you said there's a fire of red.
Yeah.
I love that.
But I must tell you, I love red. I think it's a very happy color. And I really don't know why the church year only allows one day of red. I think that's unfortunate.
Well, Palm Sunday and Pentecost, so that's two.
Yeah, Yeah, still not enough for
Not enough
herself. And so in my parish in Ottawa, someone wove me a green stole, and she had heard me complain mildly about the fact that the season after Pentecost, it's the season of Pentecost? No, now the language has changed. It's the season after Pentecost. Anyway, so she shot this green woven stole through with red bursts for me.
Oh.
And it looks a little odd, but, but I like it.
So, but the season after Pentecost all the way to Advent is green. Mm-hmm. And we've called it the season after Pentecost, but now we're coming up with new words like kingdom time and
or saints' tide, or creation tide. Really, creation tide is really gaining a lot of traction in the church, both here and in Canada, and in England as well.
Growing time.
And stewardship of the earth, as you have been talking about. We need to renew our connection with the earth. So with water and with the earth itself. So pilgrimage asks people to reconnect with the earth, with walking, with being in the midst of the beauty of the world. And how we see creation and color changes based on the light, right? The light coming through the trees, or sunlight, or misty times, we see color very differently. So I think that the change of designation for the season, that after Pentecost season, will help us see more in that long period of time. And usually people, and then it was called, I think, ordinary time.
Yeah, what a dull title.
Yeah, who cares? Right. It's just ordinary time. We're in ordinary time. What does that mean, really?
No time is really ordinary. Mm-hmm. I went, as you know, to Hawaii, and I got to swim with fish, and I'm amazed at the colors that God does. God is such an artist. There were these fish that were swimming by with these beautiful markings of purples and reds and blues and greens, and every time God expresses love through color, but we don't always look at it, do we? We don't always.
Well, we take it for granted, and I guess maybe it was, who wrote The Color Purple? Was it Alice Walker?
Alice Walker, yeah.
So she has that one line in the book about, I think it pisses God off if you walk by purple in a field and don't pay attention. We don't notice, we don't see, we take for granted. So color asks us again to pay attention. And that's a good thing.
And the seasons of the church here are telling us something. Yes. So you said you did a little research. What did you come up with anything interesting on the subject of color that you would like to share with us?
I think that there are artists who inspire how we inhabit a space. And I'm thinking about a book that I couldn't find on my shelf that was there for years, called Spaces for Spirit. And Nancy Chin was an installation artist who did a lot of work out of California, but she would fly to wherever you were and throw out rolls of paper, which she would have people painting with brooms and other things, and then they would come in procession and so on. I think there's more that we could do. I think that it's fine for the clergy and the paraments to give you a color hint, but you might be inspired by something that appears elsewhere, or something that you think you install for a season and it takes you somewhere you didn't intend. That's always the delight. So one year for an AIDS service when I was in Ottawa, no, maybe it was before that, we created a series of origami cranes of varying sizes. Some of them had wingspans of 5 feet.
Wow.
Because my space was large, like this one. And so of varying sizes, they started at the back and were flying, they were headed toward the altar. And they were suspended over the congregation. And we mined the meaning of those birds for a long time. There was a funeral during that time, and I asked if the family wanted the art to come down, and they were like, no, we feel lifted up by these birds in motion. And we made them out of photographic paper, so it was heavy and had a certain shine to it, and it wouldn't curl. And I had an engineer in the congregation who could hang anything, which was good, because I was good at the ideas and getting people to help and so on. And I would just say, Rob, can you put it up? And this is the way I want it. I want it to. So I think possibility is something that was in what I read to prepare for today. And I think that the church benefits from creativity and imagination, but that we weren't taught that in divinity school. We were taught how to keep you in the book, in the various books. So when creativity and imagination breaks out in the church, it can be unsettling. But nothing has to last forever. So even if we do an installation piece, you might only have to put up with it for 4 weeks. You know, Advent doesn't last that long. So I handed the responsibility off to another couple in Boston, and they created a silhouette of 2 figures out of bendable wire. And so when you came in on Advent 1, these 2 figures were at the back of the church. One was pointing, and the other had a candle.
Oh, interesting.
The second week, this is one of the John the Baptist weeks, you know, you brood of vipers, blah, blah, blah. They were seated in the congregation, in the pews, like this.
So they moved these wire figures?
Yeah.
Wow.
The third week, they were suspended overhead, and the scrolls of Isaiah and all the promises were coming from their arms. The fourth week, they were on the threshold.
Pretty cool.
At Christmas, there was a baby in their arms. And Adam and Pam came up with that.
Wow.
It was stunning. Then we did something else, not so stunning. So this is good though, because you know,
You
we
let the
risk all the
creativity
time.
flow.
It's sort of like our faith. We risk learning all the time. And we need the gifts of others. And sometimes people just need permission. And we should give it more often, I think.
Well, do we have any questions for Linda, our artist priest here today? Any questions from you all in the peanut gallery?
It sounds like
For the live stream folks, let me give you a mic.
That's
Not
no,
even-
it's
yeah,
great,
there you
Jeff.
go.
Thanks.
sounds like color is supposed to be a trigger,
Yeah.
a necessary trigger.
Yes.
But my question, I guess, and it's not meant to like put gender to it, but I mean, a lot of men are not color oriented.
Colorblind?
Well, they're colorblind, yes, but
Yeah.
I mean, my father was colorblind. My mother had to pick out his outfits. But I mean, I'm an artist, and I love, music, but I don't think I'm a very good, artist when it comes to what you're
Visual art,
describing and
yeah.
putting colors to it.
Well, I didn't
Is
know.
there something in the brain between a male and a female that,
Oh,
Well, that can't
I
be right,
probably-
because
probably-
Michelangelo was a male, so
yeah,
that can't be right.
We're going to throw that out. Lots of male artists. And also, you may not have had the opportunity to explore. And you may have been shunted off on one track or another. That happens to us. And sometimes we find our way back. And sometimes somebody stops us dead in our tracks and says, you know, Jack, there's probably more creativity in you than just your music. Because when Sally said that to me, there's more creativity in you than just your programming. You need to do art. I've respected her because of her gifts. And if she could see something in me that I couldn't see, well, maybe that was worth exploring. So it doesn't hurt to go to a place and study with somebody for a short period of time. It may be your area or not. I tried plein air painting, for example, and I am not a Sherpa, so I don't do that. I don't want to drag everything out there so that the wind can blow over the easel on my chair and get paint on my shirt. Not me. But somebody might invite you into color in a new way. Or might say to you, gee, I really like the color you put on these walls in your
Linda,
house.
it gets back to playing again, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because, Paul, when you say, I'm not good at something, that's an adult sort of judgment. Art really is supposed to be just playing, and there is supposed to be no judgment, so anyone can do it. And like you said, you try things, and some of it's terrible, and some of it's wonderful, but it's an expression. Joanne.
Yeah, I'll make a comment, and then I have a history question. I think art can also be, and color can be expressed in gardening.
Gardening,
So that-
yes, absolutely.
I don't think I'm very good with putting art on paper, but I like gardening, and I can create that way. My question is, the history question is, the colors that we have associated with our liturgical seasons now, when did that start? And, how did that evolve over time?
That's a wonderful question, and I do not know the answer. I know that some churches keep those colors quite religiously, regular. And I also did some training in liturgy in San Francisco at St. Gregory of Nyssa Episcopal Church. This is the church that has the dancing saints, the icons all the way up. They had a liturgical closet from all over the world. So you could put on a Japanese Shinto priest's vestments, or you could have something from Africa, or you could have, I had never seen a liturgical closet like that. So seasons for them was whatever was happening that day. So it may, I don't think that it's as flexible as it might be. So we have, and also we have some wonderful liturgical artists who design vestments, so that when you look at the altar and the people who are there, you see color moving from the principal celebrant to others. So, but I don't know, maybe.
I know a little bit that the liturgy, as you know, developed over so many centuries. Fixed colors began with just the gold and white of Eastertide, and then gradually over the hundreds of years, more would develop. So the green of normal time came later. Some of them date back to the Middle Ages. What's happening, what Linda's describing now, is as we move into a post-Christian world, the churches are getting more flexible again with color. But yeah, it was a slow development. Purple in Lent has been here for a very long time.
I think so too, because there's a tradition about Jesus's garment. We don't have a photograph, so I don't really know. But if we sense that this was the king, then we're going to clothe him. And that season of waiting and walking with the king is that. Now in Ireland, when they talk about God, they talk about the high king. Open your heart so that the high king of heaven may come in. Very different.
Well, thank you so much for being with us. It was a joy to have you. We've got to get to work. We have painting classes. Oh, Clarence has a question.
I just wanted her to recap what we're doing in November.
Oh,
Yes, thank you. Thank you. The Quiet Garden mornings have been looking through the fall at sacred space from a variety of perspectives. And so in November, we're going to do the sacred space of the soul. And we're going to experiment with color and image in a very short art exercise called soul collage. And the part of the goal of that is that everybody can do it. You bring a glue stick that's not dead, a fresh glue stick, and some scissors, and I will provide a bunch of images. You make some choices, put it on the paper, and you did art. But you also did some art that gives us a photograph of your soul at the moment. What matters? Because what image caught your eye? And the reason that the image caught your eye is because there's something in here that's speaking a truth. So, thank you, Clarence.
that will be fun in November.
Yeah.
Sounds great.
The 11th from 9 to 12.
And we have our painting classes. I know Sylvia is a faithful Tuesday painter, so that's another outlet. And we have our exhibits, but I love this thought that you have of free expression in art. And that's a pretty scary thought, but worth pondering.
So you don't want me to order the sand truck for you?
No
for
sand
Lent.
trucks yet. Thank you so much for being with us, Linda.